Oh, now we're live. Now we're
Yay! We did it. You did it.
live. How's the weather in Maine?
Do you want the truth or do you want the pleasant talk? There's no snow right now, so that's good. We're almost done with that. But it's like our fake spring, so it's like 40 and raining right now. It's chilly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like 68 here.
Don't.
But it's still got like a little chill in the,
Oh.
I know. You're like
60, it's a little chill, huh? Okay.
It's kind of like when I lived in Hawaii and I came back, it's like it's balmy weather, but it's never really humid because you always had the trade winds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would come back to West Virginia in the summertime and it would be like 90 degrees during the day, but it had like a little chill at night. It would be 75 degrees at night and I would be freezing. So it's kind of weird.
I get that. When we lived in Oklahoma, it was like 113 degrees for like the whole summer. It was over 100 degrees. And we came back to Maine for the summer and it was 75 there. I'm in a heat wave at 90 and we were in sweatshirts. We were freezing. Everybody's looking at us like we were mentally unstable.
Yes, I get it. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today, Emily?
I think we should talk about lab reviews, right? What's going on, what to expect, why they're different from what you get from your PCP, what you go over, what makes you different.
Yeah.
What makes functional medicine different, I guess.
Okay. Because today is the last day that we are running ads and offering straight up, lab reviews. We've done this for probably 8 months now. And, you field most of the questions, like almost all of the questions about that. So people what I find kind of interesting is that, like my phone will ding and I'm a light sleeper. So sometimes it'll wake me up whenever someone has clicked on that ad. And then tell us the questions that you get about this, because there's obviously a lot of confusion about what that lab review is, like how it's different. Why would somebody pay $97 to have their labs reviewed by a functional medicine practitioner rather than, getting other labs done? Or yeah. Why would somebody pay for that?
I think their first question is the lab included? Which no, the cool thing is like most of the time you've already had your labs drawn by your PCP, but they're looking for different markers than we're looking for. So, they say, you hear your PCP look at your labs and you get them back and they say, oh, everything's normal. And so then they say, well, now what? Because I still don't feel good. And their PCP is always like, well, I don't know, because they're normal. And so that's kind of where you pick up where they drop off. And so I always say, yeah, they're looking for normal, but normal is compared to America's normal. And we all know we're not healthy as a nation. So normal doesn't mean healthy. It just means you're not dying or dead, essentially. Yeah. And so what we do is we're looking for the optimal ranges to see where your body is thriving, where you're feeling good, where you're not having symptoms, where you're not fatigued, where you're not bloated. And so that's where all like the secrets kind of lie, and how to help you and fix you is your body as a whole being optimal instead of just normal.
Yeah. So, that's absolutely right. When your primary care doctor or nurse practitioner or PA or whoever, is looking at your labs, a lot of times, now this is not to vilify any traditional medicine practitioner at all. They've got a hard job. They're limited in what they can order. They're limited in how they were trained to read this, like 36 years in traditional medicine. And I still had to go back and I still had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to unlearn and relearn a lot of stuff about how to do this. So, we're giving them a break, and they have a ton of patients. So, a lot of times your traditional labs are dictated by your insurance company, what they'll pay for, number one. So, which is an advantage and a disadvantage to not taking insurance. You can use your HSA and FSA if we're running labs for you, and I get to order what you need, not just what your insurance is going to pay for. Because a lot of times when we get lab reviews, when we get the labs, I'm like, oh my gosh, this person has all of this going on, and they got 4 labs and none of them are giving us any information of what we need. So that's the first thing. The second thing is exactly what you said. Traditional values are very wide. They are looking for disease on either side of that wide swath in the middle that they accept as normal. And a lot of times those labs are color coded. So they're red. Your practitioner is so busy looking at labs, excuse me, that a lot of times they are just looking for the red. They don't even look to see what the number is. So even though your number might not be flagged as abnormal, it could be right next to abnormal, and that's not normal, but it's not getting flagged because it's not color coded. And the traditional practitioner isn't able to look at the individual numbers for the most part. They're just too busy for that.
Well, isn't it interesting too? It's not a healthy range; it's a normal range. They're not looking for the healthy range, so that's
right.
a red flag as well.
What we look at is this narrow swath in the middle, and that's where we've determined that you function optimally. So, and how they determine that traditional normal range is that they look at everybody who's had that lab test done, and they take the middle, 5, 8, 7, just depends, percent, and that is what is considered the normal range. And that really, if you look at everybody, what did they say now? It's something like 72% of the population has at least one chronic diagnosis. 72% of the population of the United States has at least one chronic diagnosis.
And that's your normal range, right?
33% of children have a chronic diagnosis. Kids. And I'm just like, it's crazy. It's crazy. So so we're looking for, how does your body function optimally right in the middle? And then the other thing that happens is I'm looking to explain your symptoms. So we're going to order labs. If we're ordering labs for you, we're going to order the labs that help pull the story together and really help to kind of peel back the layers so that we can see why you're having that symptom. And usually, all of our symptoms they might not seem like they're related, but they usually point to one or two things that are going on. A lot of times that starts in the gut. A lot of times that involves inflammation. And then from there, you get brain fog and difficulty losing weight and belly fat that won't go anywhere and difficulty sleeping and feeling tired all the time, but wired when you go to bed at night. Like all of that comes from that gut issue or comes from that inflammation. So what I find a lot of times is that, people will come to us and they'll have a CBC, which is a complete blood count. It tells us about your white blood cells that show us infection or inflammation, your red blood cells that show us it gives us clues about nutrition. And it also tells us about your oxygen carrying capacity in your blood, and then your platelets, and that's your clotting factors. But it can also point us towards inflammation as well. So we get this CBC test, but we don't get the differential. And the differential tells us what kind of white blood cells do you have. Your number might be normal, but the different types, there's 5 different types. And depending on the different types that you have, really tell the story about what's going on in your body. It could be that your immune system is kind of pooped out because it's been chronically on guard for all this time. Or it could be that your immune system is it's kind of on and it never really turned off, meaning that it's kind of like hyper vigilant. And if you're somebody who has autoimmune disease, that right there can explain it. Like your immune system got turned on probably because of inflammation, not infection, and it just never turned off because that's a chronic thing. It's coming from your gut and it's just continually going. So, making sure that you're having the right tests done. I could go on. Thyroid is a big one. A lot of times people who are pre-diabetic, or who have a glucose that is elevated, a blood glucose that is elevated, are not getting a hemoglobin A1C. And that blood glucose, is only valuable if you're fasting, and it's only a snapshot in time. So it tells us 1 moment in time. It doesn't tell us whether that glucose was on its way up, on its way down, whether it's always elevated, whether that was a freak thing that it was elevated. It doesn't really tell us anything. And people are, people are concerned about weight issues and fatigue and all of that, and they don't even get a hemoglobin A1C.
Or cholesterol. I hear a lot. Well, my cholesterol is high, and that's not even the biggest red flag anymore, like we thought it was.
Yeah, they don't have and a cholesterol of 200 is not high.
Right.
180 to 220 is an acceptable range. And your cholesterol, if it's elevated, it's going to be elevated for a reason. Normally, your cholesterol is there to help heal and repair and rebuild tissues. So if it's elevated, it's more than likely that you need some of that you need your cholesterol to be high, because every cell in your body makes cholesterol, whether you have a high amount of it in your diet or not. And that, half of the people who have a cardiovascular event, actually, half of them have a normal cholesterol and half of them have high cholesterol. So it's a crapshoot. It doesn't mean that high cholesterol is influencing your risk by itself. But there are other things. So, even before they will say you need to be put on a statin, but they have no idea what your inflammatory markers are, what your genetic risk is, because cholesterol is not it. If you want to know your genetic risk, you need to do a lipoprotein little a. If you want to know how inflamed the vasculature is, where it's more at risk for that cholesterol getting deposited and forming plaques, then you need to know what your homocysteine is, or you need to know what your ApoB is, because that tells us how much traffic. Cholesterol is the cargo, but the ApoB is a number that tells us how many vehicles are on the road in your blood vessels. And you can imagine if you have a whole lot of traffic in that blood vessel, you could still have the same cholesterol number, but a whole lot of vehicles carrying a small amount of cholesterol is more damaging than the same amount of cholesterol in fewer particles. That is going to increase your risk more than the same cholesterol number, but a fewer number of particles.
And that's a great segue, because I feel like people go to all these specialists. That's what I hear a lot. Well, this specialist and this specialist and this specialist ran tests for this and this specialist ran tests for that. But none of those specialists are working together as a full total body package. And so I think that's what is so different about what you offer, is that you're looking at the complete picture and not just this little piece, not just the cholesterol, not just the thyroid, not just, the rheumatoid arthritis piece or whatever these pieces are that are so important, because the symptoms are what leads us to try and get better. But unfortunately, when you go to such a narrow scope of practice, they're not really seeing what the causation was.
And not only that, but all of your symptoms, you are one body, you are one ecosystem. Everything, all of your cells communicate, your gut communicates with all of your body systems. And so, in America, we have a siloed healthcare system. And what that means is, how if you have a farm and you have soybeans and you have wheat and you have oats and you have whatever, you put them in different silos. And that's what really our traditional medicine tries to do with us. And it's crazy to me when you have someone who comes to you and they say, well, I'm having trouble sleeping, but my rheumatologist says that that's not their area. And I'm like, you don't think inflammation is going to affect the way that people sleep? You don't think that inflammation is going to affect your metabolism, that it's going to affect the way that you lose weight? It's, you don't think that inflammation is going to affect your thyroid? The last thing that your body is going to do, if your metabolism is running dirty, meaning that you've got a lot of these reactive oxygen species, you've got a lot of damage out there to your mitochondria, you've got a lot of soot and a lot of rust because of the way that your body is burning, it's turning food into fuel in the cell, that the last thing that your body wants to do is to convert thyroid hormone from inactive stored thyroid hormone into active thyroid hormone that gets into the cell and increases your metabolism. Your body is going to protect you, and it's going to put a brake on that. And that's why you don't have any energy, because the last thing that your body wants to do is to rev up that metabolism machine, produce more of this soot and rust and all of that that's going on, more that your liver has to deal with. And it just, so your body tries to protect you. So whenever it slows down your metabolism, or whenever it blocks something, there's always a reason behind that. And it's always protective. It's always a positive thing. The symptom might not be positive, but that's why you have to look at the body as a whole. And I mean, just working in the operating room, doing anesthesia for the last 20 years, it was insane. It was insane to hear some of the conversations, because, I would have, we would be doing a surgery on the foot, let's say. And I would be like, well, they have a decube on their butt or whatever. And they would be like, yeah, that's not my area. Just like, not interested. Or I would say, I would give them some bit of information about this person, and they would be like, yeah, that's not what I'm worried about. They're just blinders on and they're looking at this. So you really need, and I also look at labs to explain labs. It's kind of like the Bible. The Bible explains the Bible. Well, your labs explain your labs. So you can't just look at one test in isolation. You really have to look at it along with everything else. So if we're seeing inflammation, I'm going to be looking at your sodium and your potassium to see if you're running on cortisol. I don't need a cortisol level. I'm going to be looking at your sodium and potassium.
I know so many people come and get on the phone. Well, does she do hormone testing? And I was like, well, she can, but that's again, just a symptom of what you have going on as a whole. So you kind of got to take a step back and start with the labs and see what your labs are telling you before you get all these additional testing done.
Yeah. Yes. Before you get the specialized testing, like you haven't even figured out your inflammation or how your gut is absorbing. And, there's a hierarchy to hormones as well. And I think we've been sold a bill of goods that you can force your hormones to work right. You cannot. Because hormones are kind of like a baby's mobile. And when you touch one part of that, something else changes, right? Like the whole thing moves. And that's how your hormones are. But at the base of your hormones are cortisol. So if your cortisol is out of whack, your sex hormones, your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, we love to talk about these. Those are never going to be right. And that's why people say, well, I got on estrogen, or I got on, whatever, hormone replacement therapy, and I felt better for a month. And then I didn't feel better anymore, because all this stuff that isn't balanced down here is going to knock that out of balance.
Kind of the Band-Aid on something.
It is. And you're working from the top down. You don't ever do that. You got to fix the foundation. That's what makes it stable. Right above cortisol is insulin. Right above insulin is oxytocin. Right above that is pregnenolone. Right above that is thyroid hormone. So there's a lot that's between, when you're talking about hormones, there's a lot that you have to get right before your sex hormones are going to be stable. Mm-hmm. And
cortisol is not all about your mental stress or how busy your life is either. I think people forget or don't know that the cortisol can also be about, what kind of stress your body's under. Are you doing the wrong kind of workouts? Are you not having your rest days? Are you in a toxic environment? Not people, but your actual environment. Is there mold? Is there, heavy plastics? Like, what is causing your body stress, not just your mental health stress? And I feel like that's a piece that gets missed a lot.
And one of the biggest ones is that, a lot of people are, food is medicine. And so, people are looking, a lot of times they're like, well, what supplement can I take to help this? And I'm like, and a big one is to support my liver. And I'm like, okay, well, what you can do to support your liver is hydrate. Get good sleep, and get rid of some of these toxins that your liver is having to deal with, the microplastics, the fragrances, the forever chemicals, the fluoride in your water and in your toothpaste, the aluminum in your deodorant, the
pill's not going to fix that. You got to strip away all that stuff.
Right. But everybody's looking like, how can I support my liver? Well, you can support your liver by doing those kinds of things. And, we kind of shy away from changing our routines and our habits and our nutrition. And honestly, that's where you're going to have the biggest result, because just, adding something else to an already overwhelmed system just doesn't work. Your system stays overwhelmed. It's
like trying to bleach a puddle of mud, right? Like you can dump all the bleach you want on that, but it's not going to fix anything.
No, because nothing's moving. Like nothing's moving through there either. That's a great example. So any roadblocks, like when you start talking to people about getting their labs reviewed or, anything like that, like, is there one big misunderstanding or roadblock that people seem to they can't get over that, and so they just don't get their labs reviewed?
I think the biggest thing is they don't see the value yet, because you're so trained in the way we've all grown up. You go to your doctor, they read your labs, they tell you everything's fine. They may throw a supplement at you, they might throw a medication at you, and then you're supposed to be fine. And so I think for them, it's like, well, we have to trust our doctors. That's what we've been trained to do, is trust our doctors. And so instead of just trusting the results you got because you clicked on this link for a reason, you looked into functional medicine for a reason. This isn't like a coincidence. We're not stalking you. Why are you looking for other answers? Is it because you still don't feel good? Is it because your gut's telling you that the answers you're getting aren't right? I go back to my kiddos when I was told before I got into the functional medicine side of things, when they were constipated, we'll just give them Miralax. But the doctors never asked me what they were eating. They never asked me how they were sleeping. They never asked me how active they were. They just want to throw Miralax on it. And the side effects that come with these medications is astronomical. Behavioral health comes with Miralax. So if you put your kiddo on Miralax, and the kicker was, when I asked them, well, how long does it need to be on it? The answer was indefinitely. What? What? I'm just supposed to give them Miralax forever? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So I think you need to start questioning the answers you're getting. And when you're questioning them, you're going to understand the value of what we offer. Because Kim, you're not throwing a bunch of medications. You don't even prescribe medicine. You're not throwing a huge amount of supplements. You're maybe doing something that's going to support the body. So I think that's the biggest barrier I'm finding, is people's have a hard time getting out of that old framework of, you go to the doctor, they give you something and you're fixed. Because that last part, people aren't getting fixed, because if you were feeling healthy after you tried these things, you wouldn't be here.
Exactly. People are clicking on this at 3:00 in the morning. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hear my phone ding at 3:00 in the morning or at midnight. And it's like, I'm wondering, why aren't you asleep? Why aren't you asleep? And then, of course, it could be anywhere. But we've decided that so many times what we find is that, yes, we do this lab review for you, and I let you know, hey, this is where I see your issue. And here are 3 or 4 things that I would recommend that you do. I usually do offer, hey, this would be a supplement that I would recommend for you. Almost always, if there's 1 or 2 supplements that I'm going to recommend for almost everybody, it's going to be omega-3 fatty acids, and it's going to be a digestive enzyme, because those are everywhere. Everywhere, everybody is affected by inflammation and poor digestion, which which is going to affect so much other stuff. It can lead to leaky gut. It can lead to constipation. It can lead to nutritional deficiencies. It can lead to brain fog. Like, it can lead to autoimmune disease. It can lead to so much stuff. Just those 2 things. And those 2 things are kind of easy to cover. But what we found is that the labs that we were looking at were really inadequate. If you're gonna spend that money to have your labs reviewed, what I really wanted to do was to order all the labs. So we have a core health panel that literally is thebomb.com, and it's going to get to the root of cardiovascular risk. You're going to know at the end of this whether you are at increased risk from your cholesterol being high or not. You're also going to know how your metabolism is doing. You're going to know whether you are insulin resistant, which is so much more important and so different than having a high blood sugar. We're going to help you control your blood sugar, but I want to reverse that insulin resistance, because that's leading to inflammation. That's leading to your cortisol being elevated. And that just works in a loop. That just sort of feeds into this loop that it keeps you stuck. And I usually tell people, if we can get that first domino to fall, then that loop works in the opposite direction, and it spins you towards more health rather than spinning you towards a diagnosis at some point. So we're offering Core Health Panel now, and we are offering a hair tissue mineral analysis. And because now we can control the information that we're looking at. You still get a lab review. It's just bundled into the cost of the lab, which is great.
And just for people that don't know what the hair tissue mineral analysis is, you take a few pieces of your hair, you cut it, you send it to the lab, and Kim gets to see exactly what you're deficient in or what you have too much of. Because I get asked this a lot. People that are just starting on their health journey will say, well, what multivitamin do you take? No, I don't take a multivitamin, because that's not to you. That's what whoever made that vitamin thinks that the general population might be deficient in. And it can actually work against what you need. And so, I went from having 20 supplements to having one I have to take a day, a couple others, like the digestive enzyme.
Mm-hmm.
But I take one supplement that has my magnesium, my calcium, my, oh my gosh, the list goes on. My different vitamins, B12, B whatever. Creatine is even in there. So it's literally it's cut my cost of supplements by so much, and it's so much easier to take just twice a day, opposed to, handfuls all day long.
And you never know, when we're talking about minerals, that information that we get from a hemoglobin A1C that tells us over 90 days, what's your average blood sugar, that gives us a whole lot more information than just a random blood sugar. That's one snapshot in time. And then the same thing is true for your minerals. So your minerals are they're positively and negatively charged ions, and they not only affect what goes on in your body, but they affect each other. So at certain levels, it can antagonize your other minerals, or it can work in conjunction with them. It really just depends on what they are. So when we're talking about mineral replenishment, and minerals are more than just the spark plugs. When we're looking at your hair, we're looking at what's happening in the tissues. So we're really getting a clue about what's happening in the cells, what's available to your body, what's not available to your body. And we get information from your hair that tells us, what is your metabolism? Is your metabolism burning through your what you're taking in nutrition, or is it pretty well matched, or is it slowed down to protect you because you're not getting enough nutrition and all your reserves are down? Is your is your copper affecting your iron? People that have been told that they're iron deficient their whole life and they've been given iron, their copper's low. You can't use iron without copper. So you're never going to make that better unless you address copper. But in addition, it also tells us how your body is responding to thyroid hormone, how your body is at balancing blood sugar. What does your immune function look like? How are your adrenals functioning? Because there's a whole continuum about how your adrenals function, and that's where you're releasing that cortisol. So for somebody, for some people, they are they're sort of in this fight or flight mode, and their adrenals are just, constantly working, but they have enough energy and they're getting fed enough so that you're a fast metabolizer and your adrenals are stressed, but you're keeping up with it, versus someone over here who has been just chronically stressed, isn't keeping up with their reserves, and they are in adrenal burnout. So, and what you're feeling could feel similar. So you can't go based just on symptoms. And this person is in much more dire situation than this person that's just blowing through everything that they're taking in. I mean, it's so fascinating about, and these minerals are also what builds our neurotransmitters. And just like going back to the hormones, we've been told that you can force your hormones to do what you want them to do, which isn't true. But we've been taught that our neurotransmitters are just genetics. It's just what we were born with. Absolutely not true. Gut health plays a role. Your microbiome plays a role. Your nutrition plays a role. Your mineral status plays a role. All of that plays a role. And you can't affect, whether you have dopamine or GABA or, the serotonin, your feel good hormone, your oxytocin, like all of those are affected by your nutrition. So
and instead we get put on pharmaceuticals, right? To try and fix all those. And they don't get fixed. They just get masked, or your symptoms are relieved. It's not actual relief.
Right. You're less in touch with what you're feeling, which is unfortunate. Mm-hmm. And they don't come without a list of side effects like this. Like everything has side effects, even mineral replenishment, mm-hmm. There's side effects from that, but your body is divinely made, knows what to do. You just need to sometimes get out of the way and stop poisoning yourself. And then number two, give it enough support so that it can actually do what it was meant to do. So, mm-hmm. So today's the last day. If you want a lab review, you better get with Emily.
Yep.
Get it scheduled, because today's the last day that we're scheduling those. We're still talking about labs, and we're helping people know where their bottleneck is and what they need to do. But we're doing that. We're going to be ordering the labs for that, because we just found that I can tell you so much more information that way. And we feel better about that than we do saying, well, I wish that I had this lab, and I wish I knew about your thyroid, and I could give you more information if I had this. And we just decided to take control of that.
Well, and Kim, let's face it speeds up the process, because I think that's the other big piece of this is, I get people on the phone that want the lab review. Well, I'll have to go get labs from my doctor. So then instead of just us sending them the script and them going in the next day to get the labs, they're calling their PCP, they're waiting to get the call back. Then they get questioned, well, why do you need those specific labs? What are you feeling? The insurance isn't going to pay for those. These are just the roadblocks that they get. And then they say, forget it. And then they don't get them done. Or they come to us with already having labs done, and you review them, and you need more of the full piece of the pie, right? Like you need to know all of those pieces. So instead of, again, getting their answers met, it's led with more questions. Well, why didn't your doctor order this? Why didn't they order that? We need more information. So this kind of cuts out all that middleman and just gets people feeling better faster. It just gets you the data you need faster, so you can kind of get them going, opposed to like this, because it's like a month or two loop where people say, oh, I'll get my labs done in 3 months, and then they're not feeling good for 3 months. So I think it just kind of speeds the process up for everybody.
Absolutely. And, I think a lot of people are like, well, insurance doesn't pay for this. And I'm like, there's a lot of things that insurance doesn't pay for. Insurance doesn't pay for, your food either. And this is along the lines of that, right? Mm-hmm. This is along the lines of that. And I think
all the supplements that people have been trying and aren't working. I mean, I know hundreds of dollars I spent before I got these testings on supplements. Magnesium, I was using the wrong kind of magnesium. I was using it the wrong time of night. My stomach couldn't absorb what I was taking. So I was spending the same, if not more, than the labs on supplements that weren't working. So this cuts that out. It's going to save you so much more in the long run.
Right. And now when we do your lab review, this is not the do all end all. So I'm going to show you the pattern. I'm going to tell you like, hey, this is what I would do with my nutrition. Here's a couple of supplements that I would start with. Here's lifestyle stuff. That's probably number one. Like, get off your tablet at night, turn your lights down, take an Epsom salt bath, put a oh my gosh, I can't think. What's the oil?
Yep. Castor oil.
castor oil pack on your belly button, put magnesium oil on your legs, get early morning sunlight, hydrate before you caffeinate, like all of those crazy little things that people freaking ignore. I just did a hair tissue mineral analysis for someone a couple of days ago, and I had done a lab review for her like a month and a half ago, and she decided that she wanted more information. Great. Well, when I asked her and I remembered her labs, and I was telling her, yeah, remember, this is what we saw in your lab. So now we're seeing it in your tissue as well. So this has been going on for a while. Did you do any of the things that I recommended that you do? Nope, not one. So it's frustrating.
Yeah.
It is frustrating. Somebody told me that, instead of doing functional medicine, that I should have done aesthetics, because people are like laying down, they don't have any problem to look better. And I'm like, you know what? I can make you look better. I can make you look better and feel better.
Yeah. From the inside out, right?
Yes. Yes. So, all right. Any last words, Emily?
I mean, I guess, again, everybody that is watching this or tuned in is here because they want to feel better. End of story. So this is the first step, is getting your labs reviewed.
Yeah. Get the right labs, the labs, and get them looked at the right way. I'm trying to find the story of you in there. And, so many people, when they get the core health panel done or the hair tissue mineral analysis, they're sitting there the whole time, just shaking their head like, yeah. Yeah.
They feel heard for the first time. That's the other piece. They feel validated and they feel heard. They know that their symptoms mean something.
And that
they have answers.
Right. They're not crazy. This is not just normal aging. You're supposed to feel good as you age. Like, so. All right, my friend. Thank you so much. So good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kim.
All right. I'll see you next week.